Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's episode. We're going to be getting into an article out of the Journal of Cell Metabolism in 2022, October. Late isocaloric eating increases hunger, decreases energy expenditure, and modifies metabolic pathways in adults with overweight and obesity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So we've changed our tune on this, the eating late versus eating early fasting window. We've had similar conversations around this, but never talked specifically about the outcomes of this. So we're going to get into this in just a minute. Give you some clear action steps that you can do to put this into your fasting lifestyle starting today. If you are new to the podcast, welcome in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for finding us. Glad you're here. If you want to know more about our journeys and why we do what we do week in and week out with the episodes and the resources and our website and our coaching and our challenges, head back to episode 0 and episode 1. We share our story on how fasting just completely changed the game for us. It's short, it's to the point, and we've gotten so much response over the years from you guys as the listeners. We're just so grateful that we're on this journey with you and that we've reached over 5 million listeners and 7,500 challengers and hundreds of coaching clients. And I had no idea that we would be doing this in 2026, but grateful to be doing it.
Me too.
And excited to continue the conversation today. So late isocaloric eating increases hunger, decreases energy expenditure, and modifies metabolic pathways in adults with overweight and obesity. So where this came from was I saw a data review from Dr. William Wallace. He's a great follow. And it was just an image, and the title said, same calories eaten 4 hours later. And then in red it said, you burn less and get hungrier. And I'm like, yes.
You sure do.
But now let's go talk about why. Because if you know the why, you're more likely to do the what.
Yeah. So this whole thing kind of comes from that old, obstacle, that old adage that a calorie is just a calorie, right? Like a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. And so, yes, a calorie as a unit of fuel is absolutely a calorie. Like there's no breaking that thermodynamics. However, what happens within the body to a given calorie does change depending on the conditions of that body, the time of the day, the hormonal response of that body, and also the insulin response, and then the insulin sensitivity or resistance of that body. So there's different things that can happen to a calorie at different times. And so we can push those gatekeepers within the body one way or another, and sometimes we're pushing them inadvertently, accidentally in the wrong way without even really realizing it. I did this for a long time, counting calories, but I was counting my calories looking forward to my later meals. And this was a problem. So not only was I not getting enough and high enough quality sleep, but I was also pushing my meals later on in the day under the guise of a calorie is a calorie. So hey, I'm still tracking them.
If it fits in the numbers, then we're good.
Right. And it wasn't good, and the outcome wasn't good, but I didn't understand why. But this is essentially a lot of the why right here. And so that's why I absolutely love the framing of this, and that Harvard actually put together this thoughtful study right here.
Yeah, it's awesome. So the come from on the problem that we're experiencing, that we experience, and that we hear from so many of y'all, if we look around, obesity is an epidemic. 650 million people worldwide and 42% of the U.S. population. Now, Can you have normal labs with obesity at any given point in a timeline? Yes, you can. But what we find is that it's a major contributor to the global and US-based burden of chronic disease, later in life, lifestyle type disease processes, and disability. It elevates your risk for a wide range of health issues, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancers. Hell, it even, when we went through COVID, dare I say that word, a few years ago, we saw that the groups that sadly passed away or were most afflicted or affected from that infection were the ones that had those chronic lifestyle disease processes.
Yeah, of course. Additional stress already on the body.
Right. So we can talk until the cows come home about behavioral interventions targeting obesity. Those are mostly aimed at reducing dietary energy intake or increasing energy expenditure, the old eat less, move more, biggest loser type framework. So yes, the calories matter, but what your body's doing with those calories, the hormonal signals, the circadian signals, all of those things matter as well, which is where we feel our come from and why we talk about this so often, is that fasting can be a huge simplifier and trump card, like an ace up your sleeve, to make this finally work for you once and for all.
Yeah, the tricky part is, especially when you have a lot of success, when you first come to fasting, like depending on how much weight you have to lose, if assuming you have weight to lose, which most people who come to fasting do, the majority, not all, the more you have to lose and the worse your habits were before you came into fasting, the faster you tend to see results. And then, so, you know, like us, we got into a very heavily ingrained pattern of doing a lot of dinner OMADs, which not a bad thing. But at the same time, as you make progress into your fasting journey, as you get some of the weight off, you see some of the results, a lot of times that dinner OMAD gets less effective over time. And we've talked about the reasons for that being the case. But one of the big ones is that we get into a caloric need that gets balanced out with what we're actually bringing in because of the time of day. So if we're going into dinner every single day or most days, and then that's when we're breaking our fast, then we have to remember that's our least efficient time to actually process through any calories. And so just knowing that is part of the reason why dinner OMAD gets less effective over time for a lot of us. And this study is laying out, the physiology behind, or underneath, the mechanisms for that.
Yeah, we looked at a previous study, a same meal at 8 a.m. versus 8 p.m. And that study showed a 30% reduction in your insulin sensitivity and ultimately more hunger and harder fasting efforts the following day. So we've done the 8 a.m., 8 p.m., same meal. Your body does not respond the same, right? Now, what this study is looking at and what they wanted to do is look at what happens to the behavioral side, the hunger, what your body does with the energy expenditure, and what's happening with your fat storage when meals are eaten earlier versus 4 hours later in the day with everything else held constant. So what the researchers wanted to know was whether meal timing itself, late versus early, and this is where we've changed our tune over the years, an earlier eating window, right, when you break your fast, is always better than late. I tell my kids nothing good happens in the kitchen after 8 p.m. Right? So what it does is it changes the mechanism. So does the meal timing itself, late versus early, change the mechanisms of the energy balance? Appetite drive, that emotional connection to food, daytime energy burn, right? And your fat biology. So it was a randomized crossover inpatient trial, which is cool. 16 adults, small sample size, we get it, overweight or obesity categories. And now there were two tightly controlled schedules, an early meal pattern and a late meal pattern, separated by a washout, which was great.
Okay.
So calories, macronutrients, physical activity, sleep timing, light exposure, because we know the connection to light and weight loss, posture, room conditions were all controlled and matched between... so that the clock time of the meals was the only major variable. So
that's awesome.
In the early schedule, 3 identical meals were eaten starting around 1, 5, and 9 hours after waking. And the late schedule was 5, 9, and 13 and a half hours after waking. So roughly a 4-hour delay or shift in those eating windows. And what they tracked was visual analog scales 18 times per day, assessing hunger, desire to eat, and cravings for specific food types.
Wow.
So this allowed the calculation of odds being hungry scores greater than 50 across the waking period under early versus late eating. So they were actually able to quantify the hunger component, and then they looked at the hunger signals, the physiology, the serum leptin and plasma ghrelin. So the leptin and ghrelin is that mechanical growling of your stomach, and leptin is the satiety hormone, the brake pedal to say, hey, I'm full or I don't need food right now. So they looked at that across the full 24 hours, and the results were really cool. So what they found was that waking, so same 3 meals ran on an early schedule, and then same 3 meals on a 4-hour kind of shifted schedule, right? The odds of feeling hungry while awake roughly doubled on the late schedule.
Whoa.
Waking energy expenditure, so what your body's doing to burn calories throughout the day, fell 5%, and a 24-hour core body temperature dropped. And when they looked at the fat cells themselves, they did fat biopsies in about half the people. The fat, gene expression, so what your fat cells are doing, either they're being used for energy and oxidized and burned, or your body's storing fat.
Yeah.
In the late window, it shifted towards storing rather than using.
Ruh-roh.
Well, that's the opposite of what we want. And the ghrelin-leptin ratio rose 34%. The gas brake pedal to your hunger cues, which leads to a stronger drive to eat overall. But here's the kicker. Ghrelin, that growling hunger cue, was not the driver. So your ghrelin didn't like skyrocket. What happened was your leptin, your satiety signals, fell 16%. And that satiety hormone, the leptin, the satiety hormone fat releases to signal that stores are adequate. So eating identical calories later lowered the body's own fullness signal, and they believe shifted that gene expression of your fat cells to store rather than burn.
Wow. And so we got to remember that leptin is mostly acting on the neurons. So it's mostly acting within the brain, in the hypothalamus. And so it's like, it makes sense that the driving of leptin and its effect on our brain overrode that mechanical hunger, that growling feeling. You feel those peristaltic waves going on in your GI tract. And those signal hunger to us, but we can kind of ignore those, too, especially over time. It gets easier, okay, my stomach's growling. Okay, great. But if leptin's there, like wreaking havoc, that's much more difficult to ignore. And then here we run into the fact that, it's kind of like, does this mean that I can never do a late meal, or I should never do a dinner OMAD? Like, absolutely not. But when we understand that the probabilities of success are changing measurably as our meals get later, that's really helpful information. When we're going to plan out our week, when we're, making sure that we're not just like forgetting the plan, and that we that we don't have a plan for the week, and we're kind of penciling some things down. Hey, let me look at my week. Let me see, what do I have going on? Plan out a couple of my fasts here, so I have some structure. It's good to know this, because the temptation for most of us, we've polled thousands of people. The temptation is dinner as the most favorable meal. That's 90+% of respondents. And so just the fact that we know intuitively that we'll have more success with at least early dinner, if not maybe late lunch or just regular lunchtime. And then, dare I say, breakfast, even an occasional breakfast for an OMAD. That's really good, because it's going to shift the formula that we're kind of going to use whenever we're going to pencil in some of those fasts. And I just feel like that's able to move the needle in a very predictable way, and that means better long-term success more consistently and faster than if we were just trying to push that boulder up the hill, just using dinner OMADs, especially if and when dinner OMADs haven't been working as well lately.
And one of the takeaways was that metabolism shifts with timing. So we're not saying the calorie doesn't matter, or the calorie in calorie. That's still going to determine long-term, weight sustainability, weight loss, weight gain, etc. So the metabolism shifts with timing, and energy balance governs the long-term weight. They're not competing, because the first describes how timing biases the inputs to the second. So this was an inpatient scenario. Tommy, you were just talking about real life, right? So they mention it in free living. The appetite increase is probably the larger lever, since we know hungrier, cravier people eat more.
Of course.
So in this setting, intake was clamped, so only the expenditure side, the output side, could show itself. So this is really the application to a fasting lifestyle, knowing, I'll do you had some freelancing come in from a fasting perspective.
Okay.
Something came up, an eating opportunity, a late meal, a date, something happened, and you're like, I'm going to set the timer. I'm going to do a 24-hour fast. And then you find yourself eating dinner.
Okay.
Or you find yourself getting lunch. Hitting the food truck with the coworkers. And you're like, what the hell just happened?
Right.
Like, what am I doing? Well, there's physiology and hunger cues that are driving the behavior. But knowing that if you've been doing dinner OMAD or grazing later at night, or maybe adding in some of the alcohol later in the evening, your body beneath the surface is pushing you towards the behavior the next day.
Yeah. And without even realizing it sometimes. And a lot of times it's the leptin that's making you feel like you don't have as much willpower as you'd like. Like, no, I'm not really a disciplined or a willpower filled person. Sometimes we're just skewing in the too much leptin part of the equation, or the imbalance of the leptin ghrelin ratio, and maybe because of just my meal timing. And so to understand that's what seems like it might be a small lever is actually a much bigger lever is really empowering.
Yeah, I want to talk about just two things quick here, is the core temperature component.
Yeah.
So they looked at the late eating reduced daytime energy expenditure by 5% without significant changes in carbohydrate or lipid or fat burning patterns. But it lowered your average 24-hour core body temperature when you eat late, and specifically decreased temperature during the later half of the sleep episode. This is when your fasting lifestyle, your diet-induced thermogenesis should have faded. So your body temperature is going to come down. It's like take the hot shower 90 minutes before bed, right? Then your body temperature is going to drop so you can get into good sleep, right? Restorative sleep. But what happens when you eat late is that doesn't happen, and that body temperature stays elevated. Now, I can see this personally. When we went away for a couple of nights, we ate late, and I slept hot that night. I just know that my WHOOP, my HRV is going to be down, my recovery is going to be down, because I literally can watch my heart rate. Typically, when I fall asleep, it drops and then stays low the rest of the night. But on the nights that I eat late, which is very rare these days, it stays high, and it takes all night for it to come down.
Yep.
Right? So that was one thing I wanted to mention. The second thing is inside the fat cell, the gene expression towards storage. So only 7, small data size, did the tissue biopsies, right? And the late eating down-regulated several genes involved in fat breakdown. So it tilted things away from fat utilization or fat burning. So at the same time, late eating up-regulated genes involved in fat production. And then autophagy-related genes were also reduced, aligning with increased fat cell production or growth. And those leptin connections were all connected to that fat cell behavior. So to summarize, fat breakdown decreased, fat production and growth increased. Now, this was before our fasting lifestyle. Back in the day, my wife and I did a 6 months. We hired a nutritionist here in Katy, spent lots of money, did the bod pod, the caliper testing, and we were on it. He labeled me as a slow oxidizer.
Okay.
Well, that's of carbs, meaning I had insulin resistance.
Right.
I didn't know that yet. So I was seeing some small, slow changes, but I was also ingesting like fast-acting carbs and carbs all throughout the day.
Like measured macronutrients, right? And within calorie specifications too.
Yeah. So what would happen is when we were doing this 6 months, we were actually writing our weights on the mirror in the morning. My wife and I were holding each other accountable.
Yeah.
And if I had a poor night of sleep, I knew that the scale was going to be the same or actually tick up.
Yep.
This explains a potential mechanism causality as to why. So I knew that. Now I can have a poor night of sleep and the scale can be the same or slow down because I don't have that insulin resistance.
Yeah.
And I'm really working hard on flexing that not eating late muscle. Most of my dinners rarely go past 6 p.m.
Right. And then you can also make some concessions when those dinners are even at 6 p.m., let alone later. Like I'll just remove pretty much all of the carbohydrates altogether, unless maybe it's just some vegetables.
I do most of my carbs early in the day on my midday meal. Yeah.
Right. You don't have to just go no carb because you know that the scale is going to be easier to control that way. You can also shift your macronutrients, based on our body's response to these things too. That's the better way to do it, the more sustainable way to do it without feeling like, no, I just can't look at a piece of bread again, et cetera, that kind of thing. But I wanted to address, you brought up the thermic effect or the thermogenesis. So, core body temperature, what's the opposite of your core body temperature dropping? It will be raising your core body temperature. How do we do that macronutrient wise? We do that with protein. Prioritizing protein literally has the opposite effect of a later meal. So instead of that core temperature dropping, we're going to be increasing core temperature by increasing our protein intake, our average protein intake across all of our meals. But that's one more reason to remember prioritizing protein is really, really important. And let's do the opposite so we can get better results would be that when we get later on in the day and we see that it's a 5% reduction in caloric burn rate, well, what we can do is we can backload the end of the day with some deliberate exercise. It could be low intensity, steady state exercise. That's a great way to do it. Just some low and slow walking.
Post-meal
walk. Post-meal walk.
Sorry, I stole your thunder there. I jumped in on you.
Yeah, jinx. It's such a superpower, though. There's a reason for it. And part of why it works so well to reduce the area under the curve, the blood sugar response, the insulin response that comes following along that is because of these reasons. So especially when it's dinner OMAD or dinner went a little later than usual, or oh man, I wish I hadn't had so much for dinner or so many carbs. Then make the exercise, double down on the exercise, add in a couple of little sprints with it, or extend the walk a little bit longer. You do these things. These things might feel like, hey, they're not necessarily they're not New Year's resolution, big sweeping changes, but they are enough in the moment to restore balance here so that you're not necessarily waking up tomorrow to like a surprise on the scale or overall like frustration during your fat loss phase. This can reduce the frustration if we're very deliberate and diligent with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of summarize and give some action steps on how to adapt it into your fasting lifestyle and levers that you can pull.
Yeah.
So to summarize, identical meals 4 hours later in the day made people hungrier, lowered their daytime energy expenditure, and shifted their fat cells towards storage, even though calories, macros, sleep, light, and activity were all matched. The main hormonal signal that changed with late eating was a drop in your daytime leptin. That's your I'm full hunger cue. Hey, I don't need any more food. I'm good. Not a ghrelin, not an increase in hunger cues. We see this with consistent fasting efforts where you're not as hungry when you don't eat as often.
Yeah.
Right? So that means the body's fullness signal was weaker, and the appetite stronger despite the identical intake, just eating 4 hours later. And the meal timing itself did not break the energy balance. Instead, it biased the equation by increasing the drive to eat and slightly reducing your next day burn, which in day-to-day life would tend to push weight upward over time because the hungrier and cravier you are, the more likely you are to eat. That's that white knuckling approach. So,
yeah,
how do we anchor this? Well, earlier eating window. This is also great for women in childbearing years, pre or perimenopause. Getting your food in earlier in the day is great for healthy hormone production.
Yeah.
But the bulk of the calories are going to lead in that early daytime phase where satiety signals and calorie burn, thermogenesis, are more favorable.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're already doing 16.8 or 18.6, start pulling that window forward by 1 to 2 hours over the next few weeks. And watch your evening hunger and sleep quality. Because there is research that shows skipping breakfast makes you eat more later.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
100%.
Yeah, and I love the idea that as we go a little bit earlier with our meals, then what it does is it allows us the opportunity to think about our long-term maintenance solution as well.
Yep.
Which for most of us, we're not just going to need one nutrition opportunity to get in sufficient nutrition, right? So I like to think about that as 2 compartmentalized meals. Mine are usually 3 to 4 hours apart, and the smaller of those 2 meals is going to be the later one. So I can have a better response to it, so it doesn't disrupt the sleep, so I don't have as many of these small little levers that I need to then balance out in order to keep control of the scale, keep feeling well, and keep my nutritional balance in check.
Yep. So number 2 here, and adding it in, is treat late night eating as a high risk zone, not just extra food.
Okay.
So frame post-dinner grazing, late dinners, and late meals as a double hit. So higher odds of feeling hungry, plus lower relative burn and more fat storage.
That's great.
Right? So set a firm kitchen closed 2 to 3 hours before bed. Right? So we do this with our kids. We just ate dinner. Dad, can I have my nighttime snack? What time is it? It's 8:05. Nope. But Dad... So we learned through those, right? Last night I broke down and he had a cheese stick. Well, it wasn't a bag of Doritos, right? Win.
Right.
To our conversation from last week's episode about kids, right? Win.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But now they're aware of it. So high risk zone, not just extra intake. And then use your fasting to realign the appetite signals with the clock. So consistent daily fasting intervals will consolidate your hunger to reduce some of that random evening snacking when you shift your window earlier in the day. Now, give it some time. It's not going to happen the first time you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Expect an adaptation period, over a couple of weeks. But track your hunger and your sleep quality. So larger meals earlier, lighter intake later. And if you are on an evening meal, hey, it fits my life, we have dinner with the family, my husband, my spouse, whatever, keep it smaller, protein forward, like you mentioned earlier, Tommy.
Yeah.
And still have like a chosen window. Don't just be like, I'll just do it. Still try to put some bumpers on the bowling alley, some boundaries there.
Yeah. They'll help.
Yeah, so this way the timing and the food that you're eating both align with the circadian biology rather than fighting it, right?
Absolutely.
And I love this kind of shift, Tommy, as we wrap up, is that like fasting isn't just about skipping meals. It's choosing when to eat. So your body's physiology and hormones and circadian clocks support your appetite control and energy balance rather than fight it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a matter of being of that proactive thought of, okay, I'm going to move this meal earlier. So I'm choosing when to eat. It's not just that I have to say no to everything. I'm choosing when to eat. Like you said, you have the power. You're just making this choice for a very specific reason, because I know my physiology and my psychology are going to respond better this way. So I'm going to do this. This is what I'm choosing to have my meal. So then flip your schedule as much as you can. What would you normally be doing during that time when, maybe you would have skipped the meal earlier in the day? Yep. What would you be doing, right? So can you change around some of the things so that you're not just feeling like I have this time vacuum, time void later on in the day? Because that's where a lot of us, kind of run into trouble. Like, oh, hey, I was supposed to be fasting for this evening, but I found myself near the kitchen. Now I'm tempted to break this fast earlier. Well, so hopefully that the habit of earlier meals helps to control that. But then also let's take it a step further and be proactive. What am I going to be doing with my hands during that tough time, especially if you have a long-standing pattern of dinner OMAD? And be easy, be forgiving with yourself that it's going to take some reps. Probably it's not going to just feel easy or intuitive right off the bat, but it's worth some reps. It's worth getting in there, getting a little uncomfortable with it, and trying it, like getting outside of your comfort zone a little bit, because the benefits are real and they're there. And new habits take some time to ingrain. Yep. So be patient with it, but it's about the long-term success and the consistency that you're building.
Yep, absolutely. So as we wrap up, Tommy, we're trying to eat when your metabolism is most ready to burn and least likely to store. And this just often means earlier fasting windows, nutrition windows, and more consistent foundational fasting efforts. So, man, I hope this resonated. Pick one or two things that you can do to put into your day-to-day life. Now, if you're looking for more support, you can head to the show notes, click the link. It'll bring you to our resources page on the website, thefastingforlife.com. We've got the 20-page PDF, the blueprint to fasting for fat loss. But keep fasting. You got this. We're on this journey with you. Tommy, man, I appreciate the conversation, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.